Thank you very much for this warm welcome. And first of all, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for bringing me here to Latvia. You said Latvia? Spoiling me with cod liver and sparkling wine and pickled cabbage during the whole morning. Actually, this is the second visit of mine to RīGA for the last 2 weeks. So my wife, she asked me yesterday, well, do you have a mistress in the RīGA? I said, the only mistress I have is the lamprey. I've come to share with you my story, and I hope that you will find it interesting. So my story is the idea that great taste, wonderful food, is not just a source of joy, but also a matter of love and maybe an instrument to improve life. I am from part of the world where ascetic doctors and Puritan priests have led somewhat like a 300-year-long anti-hedonistic crusade against the pleasure-giving qualities of food and against sensuality as such. In Denmark, for centuries, the idea of preparing wonderful meals for your loved ones has been considered a sin, in line with theft, abuse of alcohol, extravagant dancing, and masturbation. The philosophy so successfully communicated by these fine people has been that if you want to live a long and healthy life on earth and have a good chance of avoiding going to hell in the end, the only thing you have to do is to eat something of inferior taste and get it over with in a hurry. It was in this spirit that I was brought up in a middle-class family in the 60s, the darkest period of Danish food history. My mother represented the first generation of women working outside the home. It was her luck that this was an era of canned meatballs, potato powder, sauce coloring, and of the stock cube. My parents formally raised me on a diet composed of chopped fatty meat of the cheapest quality, frozen vegetables pre-boiled many years before. Both ingredients were stocked in massive chest freezers in our basement. And most of the meat was wrapped in toasted breadcrumbs 3 to 4 times before the meat was deep fried in margarine packed with trans fatty acids. The excess margarine we use that for dipping. At the age of 15, I weighed 95.7 kilos, and I was amongst the 3 fattest kids in Denmark. Eating, when I was a kid, was never a matter of reaching out for the beauty of life. It was a matter of efficiency. Food should be cheap, it should be prepared and eaten in less than 30 minutes. Then what radically changed my life was 1 year spent in Agen, the capital of prunes in Gascony, the profound France. I worked as an au pair with a 4th generation baker and chef, one of the most talented craftsmen of his generation, Guy Sværsø, and his wife Elisabeth. The point was that they could not have children, and they had always wanted a son. On my side, my parents had divorced when I was 14. I didn't see my father very much anymore, and my mother became an alcoholic. So we were a very good match. Until this day of my life, Guy is the most generous person I have ever met. His bakery was a time pocket, reflecting the golden age of French culinary craftsmanship. He always bought the best produce. He never challenged a price. He gave away a lot of stuff, and he gave discounts even to people who didn't know. His recipes were extremely complex, the cake were very big, and he had way too many employees. So one day in the bakery, at the age of 20 years, I decided to challenge this business model. And why? You have to understand that my father's life philosophy was that happiness is about being more efficient tomorrow than yesterday. And he said to me always, you are a lazy boy. and you are an incompetent boy. It was an exaggeration. I was very good at ping pong and badminton, and I was not that incompetent. I don't think he said that to hurt me, but to inspire me to do better tomorrow. So one way of bringing to my mindset this philosophy of speeding up and being efficient was that he let me cut the grass. Basically, I was cutting the grass from the age of 11 to 14, 3 times a week, 3 years in a row. And my father watched me do this. He basically time lapsed and gave me penalty points if I left unfinished patches. And I became very, very good at cutting grass. So that was the main reason why I had the courage to challenge his working philosophy. And if I had expected gratitude from Guy that day in the pastry chef, from this Renaissance man, I was wrong. When I shared my observations, he put his big pastry chef hands on my shoulders and told me a couple of things that I will remember to the end of my life. The first thing he said was in French, if you will excuse me. He said, le bonheur, c'est savoir ce que l'on veut et le vouloir passionnément. Et mon fils, he always called me mon fils, my son, quoi que tu fasses, il faut que tu l'aimes. This means that happiness is about knowing what you want to do with your life and having the guts to follow your heart. And then he said, my son, no matter what you do, you have to love it. So it's funny, my father, he said, I don't care shit about what you're doing as long as you are efficient. And he said, you have to follow your heart, my son. A very different message. The second thing was more referring to my idea of speeding up the process in the bakery. He said, le temps. Le temps, c'est le pire ennemi, non pas seulement des métiers de bouche, mais aussi de l'amour et de l'homme tout bref. Haste is the worst enemy, not only for gastronomy, but also for love and maybe for humanity itself. I think that this encounter with this brave man was the reason why at the age of 20, I suddenly knew what I wanted to do with my life. I had got something like a calling, and it's a gift. You can't just buy it in a shop. I just woke up one day knowing what I wanted to do with my professional life. I wanted to go back to my fucking country and change our food culture. You can't learn that in school. How can you learn how to change the food culture? It's not a profession. But I hadn't got the guts to start working as a chef. I didn't know if I was good enough to cook and make sauces and everything, so I went to Copenhagen Business School. And I think that I was the only student of my duration who decided to spend a lot of time investigating the relationship between happiness of life and the perception of time. And I was looking about in order to find funny relations or interesting relations, and I actually found this relation from our culture. An interesting linear relationship between the evolution of divorces and the number of microwave ovens in Danish homes in the period from 1955 to 1995. I don't expect ever to win the Nobel Prize from this research, but I think it is extremely interesting that those two curves are more or less similar. And I can tell you that in my family, we got a microwave oven in '74 when I was 11, and my parents divorced 3 years afterwards. Some of the things that I've been battling with since the beginning of my career as an entrepreneur has been the lack of diversity. Basically, I came back from France, where there were 2,000 wine producers, 10,000 cheesemakers, 15,000 distinct lentil growers. There was diversity, and diversity produces enthusiasm, engagement, dedication, and make people feel inspired, and develops a language to classify products. Diversity is the foundation for a great food culture. So I came back to a monopolistic country where the biggest companies had swallowed and closed down the small and inefficient ones in a constant, endless search for efficiency, no matter the quality of the taste. So I saw from the beginning that one of the most prominent challenges of mine was to enhance diversity in every goddamn corner of our food industry. So I started a certain number of companies for the next 10 to 15 years. Started a catering company. I started a chocolate importing company that would bring Valrhona chocolate based on single variety beans to our market. I started buying green coffee with a couple of friends in some of the most ambitious plantations in the world, and roasting that according to, in order to bring out the most wonderful flavors of coffee. I started a couple of retail shops selling Nordic products and trying to redefine the cafeteria in order to come up with a contemporary, urban, cheap, convenient, affordable restaurant and takeaway concept. It's not that easy, but pretty difficult. We started a number of canteens, and basically today this is the biggest company of my group. We are cooking every day for 14,000 people on 70 addresses with a crew of 250 chefs that are profiting from all the innovations that we do in the other part of the group. We've got a cookery school for kids and for corporate people, and we also teach private people to cook, and why not one day we might have a Latvian masterclass or demo of how to eat your wonderful produce here. We have an ancient hotel in the area of the country where I was born, 180-year-old hotel. We've got a couple of organic bakeries based solely on grain that we grow and mill ourselves. I'll get back to that. That's actually the flour. Ancient Nordic grain varieties of the Nordic G-Max. We have a 3-hectare organic vegetable field where we have 2 full-time gardeners employed. And we have given away, handed over 60 fields of land to 60 families who come and grow the vegetables with us. Those vegetables, we send them into the restaurant, so they base their menus on what is actually being harvested this week and not on what they think in their mind that they should cook with this week. But all the restaurants are some of them, especially RīGA, a little sister to Noma that we opened 1 year ago. We've got an orchard in the southern part of the country. We grow apples, prunes, and pears, and especially in order to make vinegar. We make vinegar. 10 years ago, the only vinegar was made out of the most boring product in the world, namely refined white sugar. Can you imagine any more boring vinegar than sugar vinegar? Now we start making vinegar out of elderberries, blueberries, blackberries, sea buckthorn, and of course apples, prunes, and pears, and we age them. This is my partner, Andreas. And all together we are today. I never planned to have a big company. I never made plans, basically. But we ended up having now 600 employees and a yearly turnover of 70 million euros. So what is the formula that we have been sort of following, if I should say that? Well, Guy told me when I was with him that that you have to judge your decisions in the light of eternity. I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought that it was something about always looking for a greater cause. So for the last 25 years I have tried my best. I haven't always succeeded, but I've tried my best to only invest myself in projects and companies that were not just good for me, but also would create new opportunities and growth and promote my industry, my colleagues, my country, and also in the larger picture, I like to believe, make the world a better place in which to live. I think that this approach as a businessman is one of the reasons, maybe the main reason why for all those years I feel that I have not been surrounded by ordinary employees working for money or personal progress, but by missionaries or comrades. The commercial ideas that I followed on my way, I never started a company where there was any demand. So I've always started a company where there was no demand, no competition, no products, no demand whatsoever. So therefore we have never had salespeople employed. We've never been selling we have been creating enthusiasm through the products and services we have started. And maybe Noma, that I will get back to, is the best example of this. So we basically, because our mission was to change the game, to change the vinegar industry, to change bread, to change the restaurant scene. So if you want to change something, then don't copy the others. So we have specialized in starting very, very small, friendly, unhostile companies with a very little number of employees at almost no cost. Companies that will be profitable in 1 year, but make very, very small profits, if any at all. But that would change the industry. So we have sacrificed profits for allowing ourselves to do something truly great. And that's an idea, a business concept that may attract the best people in the industry. But you have to be able to find ways of how to create movements that will speed up demand. And if you work within what I call win-win-win scenarios, when whatever you do creates so many bigger advantages for the people around you than they do for yourself, then you have a win-win-win scenario and you will be embraced by the world. If you try to kill people and beat down your competitors, and then it's different, it's hostile. I don't want to spend my life fighting with people. At the beginning of this millennium, gastronomy in the leading culinary countries, Spain and France, had become increasingly elitist and irrelevant and detached from most people's lives. So when René, this 25-year young man, René Redzepi, and I started Noma in 2003, we wrote in our menu that we want to create a new Nordic cuisine that embraces the Arctic and brightens the world by virtue of its great taste and its unique character. Pretty pretentious, you may think, and I totally agree. But the fact is that food matters beyond pleasure. 90% being lost in less than a century, we can no longer deny that we are in the middle of a process of mass extinction of the biological species on Mother Earth. This has happened 5 times in the period, in the space of humanity. But the special thing about this 5th mass extinction that we are in the middle of is that this time it is life destroying itself, so to speak. In a period of just about 150 years, one very intelligent species is almost single-handedly demolishing its own livelihood as well as large parts of the biosphere. And in the meanwhile, 1 billion people are suffering from hunger and poverty, and paradoxically enough, another 1 billion people are suffering from obesity. It is crazy, and you may feel powerless. But man holds a unique position amongst the living creatures on Earth. Evolution has provided us with the ability to think and show compassion. And also remember Leonard Cohen, who once said, there is a crack in everything, and that is where the light comes in. In 2002, René Redzepi and I felt that time had come for chefs to stand up and raise their voice. We wanted to redefine luxury. We wanted to emphasize seasonality and restore the missing link between cooking and nature. And we wanted great food to be compatible with healthiness. The reality, however, was that we were on a suicide mission. Our colleagues doubted that we could create a great restaurant relying on Arctic produce, and what would we do in wintertime when nothing could be harvested in our country. Remember that Noma was declared from the first second foie gras, caviar, and olive oil free zone. We would base the restaurant 100% on local produce. Local to us meant Nordic. People made fun of us. They say that at Noma we would be serving seal pennies, endangered species, rakefish, surströmming, and other horrible food items from the chambers of horror of the national Nordic cuisine. So I can assure you that in 2003 and 2004, a dinner invitation for Noma sounded like a threat. So what we did was to try to share this vision of creating a great cuisine with the rest of the region. We invited chefs and farmers in all Nordic countries, even ministers, small and big food companies, politicians and private people, to come to the Nordic Cuisine Symposium, where we wanted to define the contours of a new Nordic cuisine that maybe one day would be counted as one of the most admirable ones in the world. We said, why the hell should we not allow ourselves to dream of one day handing over to our children something truly great? A manifesto, the one you see up there, was worked out and signed in 2004 by the until then 16 most Francophile top chefs of our region. And the happy thing was that at the end of that symposium, all those people, they ended up actually feeling that they had a role to play, and that it was possible maybe in 30 years or 50 years or 70 years to create a cuisine that might become bigger and more wonderful even than the French and Spanish one. So we have created a large common co-ownership to the vision that we have formed ourselves. The Nordic Council of Ministers, they suddenly, half a year after the symposium, they adopted the Nordic Cuisine Manifesto as the ideological foundation for what became known as the New Nordic Food Program. And in Denmark we entered a new era where the idea of struggling politically for a better food culture was suddenly, for the first time in our history, rooted in our parliament. But the meaning of Noma was never to create the best restaurant in the world, and the meaning of the Nordic food movement was not to build an introvert brotherhood reserved for wannabe Michelin chefs and biodynamic farmers. What we wanted more than anything was that the values of this manifesto would live in people's everyday lives and in people's hearts. So today, 9 years later, cabbage is worshipped and rye is the new black. White herbs are collected and sold in supermarkets. Festivals celebrating our own food are emerging all over Scandinavia. Nutritionists and chefs are turning the gastronomic ideas from the Nordic cuisine movement into everyday food. This is a picture from a food series called New Scandinavian Cooking, where I happen to be the host from the Danish edition. And this is the moment where the food series is being introduced in New York to the American market. This is my little daughter. And it was a very special moment where the Crown Princess of Denmark is actually, in a second, sucking sea buckthorn juice out of my hand. A very, very special moment that I will remember for many years. It's a very happy chef to see up there. Thousands of young, vibrant food companies have been born in the Nordic countries for the last 8 years. A handful of the Nordic top restaurants have even entered the list of the world's 50 best restaurants. And most of the culinary world is talking about what the hell is going on up there, and why and how did it all happen. I think it happened that smoothly, without any major investment of money, because we thought from the beginning of the new Nordic cuisine as a benign virus. As a benign virus, as an informal, consumer-driven movement. Despite the obvious commercial, short-term profit potential, we were all, first and foremost, propelled by the joy of learning more, and by the joy of sharing, and by the joy of building true value across professions and across geography within our region. Openness, democracy, and inclusion have been key words from the beginning. Anyone could always step in to the new Nordic cuisine movement, anyone could contribute, and anyone could benefit. There is no, and there has never been, any answer book when it comes to the food on the plate, or on how to behave, or which way of smoking is best. It is not our task to define that. There has never been any logo, there has never been any precedent. You could not become a member. The phrases before were not rules to obey, but values that have functioned as a guiding light in the darkness for us all. But not any kind of values, but values that happen to be, and that was our luck, or a reason for the success. They happen to be in harmony with the global zeitgeist, and therefore they have the capacity to change the game of gastronomy, turning the focus away from Spain and France and towards the Nordic region, and I would even say also the Baltic region. But let me just say it again, that the new Nordic cuisine is not just a search for clinical culinary excellence. Of course, culinary excellence, a fantastic taste on the plate, has been crucial, but it is beyond that. It has been an attempt to come up with real solutions to some of the greatest challenges of our time. And this is one reason why almost any stakeholder has wanted to join this process, project. And of course, in the whole game, you cannot overestimate the impact of Noma being voted the best restaurant in the world 3 times in a row. I want to give you just one concrete example, because I think there are many entrepreneurs in this room. So I want to give you, share with you one experience about how to start a movement where there is no demand. When back in 2008, we wanted to start an organic bakery that would work with ancient grain varieties and doughs with dramatic amounts of whole grain. But as whole grain bread sounds like a punishment, you can't expect people to change their eating habits just because you set up a couple of bakeries or inform them that too much refined wheat might threaten their health. You have to win their attention, you have to get them involved in order to be able smoothly to change their habits, and also to allow yourself the tremendous pleasure of operating in a very friendly environment with your young, fragile little baby enterprise. So as you see in a minute, the only thing you need to get the ball rolling, to unlock the power of the market, to change consumption patterns, is some imperfection to challenge, some sense of urgency. We never spent any money on doing what we did in grain and bread and flour and the baking classes, but we just shared the idea. We educated the consumer, and we flirted with the consumer, and we just shared the idea that shouldn't we change bread together? Because eating too much meat is bad for us all. Eating more grain, especially if it was organic whole grain, would be better. Because white refined flour is one of the top 3 reasons in the world for diabetes 2 and obesity. And remember that it is a paradox that in one of the richest countries in the world, Denmark, less than 3% of the bread is made from organic flour. And for each kilo of bread that is made from organic flour, 330 liters of groundwater is freed from meeting pesticides. What we basically did in order to test this thesis, this idea, was that we set up at the Roskilde Music Festival in 2010 a street food project. And the one with the video has to be ready because in 20 seconds I will need the first video. So we set up a street food restaurant where we will serve a redefinition or an updated version of Danish classical roast pork sandwich as an excuse to have an organic bakery. Because what we basically wanted to do with that street food restaurant was to teach 80,000 people the fundamentals of baking. We wanted to share the idea that a great loaf of bread can be one of the greatest luxuries on earth, and that anyone in a couple of hours can learn to make such a bread oneself at a fraction of the price of the lousy bread you normally would buy in the supermarket and with the bakery. Give me the first video, please.
Vi er på Roskilde i år med Meyers Bageri og Deli som en protest imod de internationale fast- og junkfood konglomerater. Og jeg vil gerne fortælle jer meget kort en historie om, hvordan jeres brød bliver bedre end noget, I nogensinde har bagt. Regel nummer 1. Hvidt brød er noget lort. Vi er nødt til at have noget kim og klid, en lille smule fuldkornsmel med ned i melet. Regel nummer 2. Der skal mere vand i dejen. Der skal mere vand i dejen. Problemet er, at alle brødopskrifter... Mere vand i dejen! Regel nummer 3. Eld som ind i helvede. I skal ælte 10-15 minutter. Regel nummer 3, det er mere salt. I skal op omkring 25 gram salt per kilo mel, fordi salten fremmer brødsmag af korn. Og det næste, det er lang hævetid. Normalt så hæver man 50 gram gær, står der, og så hæver man 2 timer, mens man går på toilettet, og så bærer man brød. Det er løgn! Det her, man kan ikke få et godt brød frem på 2 timer. Man skal planlægge lortet, og man skal give det de 8 timer, det skal have, eller 16 eller 24. Så regel nummer 5 handler om at gå ned i gærmængde. Kan I sige det? Gå ned i gærmængde! 1, 2, 3! Sådan! En gang til! 1, 2, 3! For når man kommer ned i gærmængde, så kommer man op i hævetid. Og den lange hævetid, det gør, at brødet på naturlig måde danner mælkesyrebakterier. Og det fantastiske med mælkesyrebakterier, det er, at de gør kornets næringsstoffer tilgængelige for kroppen. Er det en god idé, at kornets næringsstoffer bliver tilgængelige for kroppen? Yeah! Og den sidste regel, det er faktisk bare, at man skal bage sit brød i en varm ovn. Mange opskrifter skriver 180 grader, 190 grader, 175 grader. Ovnen skal være varm! I Mærko kan man købe en stenplade til 198 kroner. Den kan man bryde ind i en hvilken som helst ovn. Og så kan man varme stenpladen op, og når den er varm, så kan man bage i stenovn. Så det var sådan set bare det. Fedt I kom. Tak for det, I har støttet os hernede. Og så er der gratis brød til alle sammen.
I think we all agree that this is very different from normal marketing. This is not, I mean, at this moment where we started to share our vision about bread and flour and how we could come up with a new version, a new category of our new vision of bread, we didn't even have a package of flour to sell. We had no bakery at that moment, but we won a lot of authority and legitimacy and a lot of confidence, and whatever we did along those lines was interpreted as something good for the bread industry, for the bread culture. And I think you could do something like that whenever you have something genuinely to share with people. But if you are wicked and mean and just want to kill someone and steal the market or sell shit, you can't use this philosophy. You have to use classical tools, sales people, advertisement, and stuff like that. One thing that we all have to remember is that it is so goddamn easy to get trapped by your own luck. But as I said before, Noma was never meant to be an end in itself. And the Nordic cuisine movement was never meant to be about branding of our region as something more beautiful or more competent or more relevant to the world than your region. We all know that the Vikings, they went down through Europe, they burned down the European villages and raped their women. I like to believe that the Nordic cuisine movement is different. It is not a crusade against pizza or lasagna or bœuf bourguignon. It is not a declaration of war against ceviche or Moroccan tagine or Latvian food. I believe that if our movement, if the Nordic cuisine movement is a threat against anything, then it is the transnational, massive junk and fast food corporations that ruin our health, undermine our independence, and potentially threaten this planet. The best part, though, is I think that if this fairy tale that I have told you about today could happen in Denmark, bearing in mind the lousy state of our food culture 10 years ago, then it can formally happen any place in the world. We have come to the conclusion, and we didn't see that in the beginning, that you can simply leave out the word Nordic from the Nordic Cuisine Manifesto. That's an amazing discovery. You can leave out, we thought that it was all about Nordicness, but now we have learned that we can just leave out the word Nordic, and it may work anywhere else in the world. Before I want to pursue this path with you and share one of my latest experiences with you, I just want to tell you that something that A second thing that changed my life, maybe the first thing was when I met the baker, my spiritual father, who saved me from my ruined childhood in this culinary darkness where the most beautiful thing that was that I wasn't abused of sexually. Normally I have another, but I haven't got this one with me, I can see. But basically what happened in 2008 in Denmark was there was an economic crisis coming. And my board of directors told me that you are in deep shit, my friend. And the thing was that we were 500 employees at that moment, and the profit that year was only 50,000 lats. That's not a, you know, so 500 employees and total profit 50,000 lats. We were in deep shit. And they told me that, Claus, you have to employ a CEO with knowledge of money and operations. I've always considered myself to be the Ministry of Beauty and not the money man. So then I said, it's not possible. I've got 14 different employees, sort of companies. Nobody in this world can understand this big mess, this chaos. You have to do it. And then in the end I did that. I employed an operational monster who loved to earn and control money and finances as much as I have always loved to make wonderful food projects with wonderful people. So in less than 3 years, he turned the turnover, the profit of the company from 50,000 lats into 2 million lats. And that was something of a dramatic change. And therefore, I decided to try to match his capacity for earning money. I think we have to be more formally professional in our attempt to contribute to the evolution of this world. So therefore we started a foundation, Melting Pot Foundation. I started that in 2010 as a way of giving away my money. Not all my money, not all my money. But we are giving away something between 5 and 10% of the profits every year as a gift to the foundation. And the foundation will not just give away that money, but will kind of also give away the money with our key competences within food craftsmanship and entrepreneurship. We try to help marginalized and underprivileged people wherever we think that we can make a difference. I've always been inspired by the feeling that I wake up in the morning and that I really make a difference. Give me another video, please.
Det er helt over et fængsel.
Vridesløse lille statsfængsel.
Ja, det er Bornholm.
Det er Claus Meyer. Goddag.
Ja.
Jeg har lidt brød med.
Ja.
Det brød, der er ikke betalt i brødene, skal de også igennem?
Det skal igennem.
Jeg er lidt mere for rolig over den, da jeg sad i bilen. Men jeg går ind for at vente dem alle sammen. Jeg vil helst have 80, jo. Det er fangerne, der står deroppe. Kan I ikke komme forbi heroppe alle sammen, så har jeg sgu været styr på det. Hvis ikke der er nogen, der skriver, at de måske gerne vil være med, så er der ikke noget projekt. Så... Hvad synes du, jeg skal lære dem, skat? Hvad synes du, jeg skal lære dem? Hvad skal jeg sige noget til dem?
At du har en datter.
Skal jeg sige det?
Ja. Og jeg synes, at det er sejt, at man er røver.
Du synes, det er sejt, at man har røver?
Ja. At man tør det.
At man tør røve noget?
Folk sidder længere, før de for eksempel kan begynde at blive udskrevet til udgang. Ja, altså et eller andet med nogle rotter.
Rådne kød! Rådne kød! Det var rigtigt! Det var ubehageligt, synes jeg. Og så det slog mig bare lige, at det jo ikke sikkert, man har ønsket det. Rådne kød! Jeg vil gerne starte med at sige, at det projekt, det handler om for mig, det er at prøve at bevise, at man kan tage mennesker i forskellige alder, sætte dem i stand til at lave mad i verdensklasse.
Der sad vi nogle stykker, der snakker om, hvem tror du er, men altså, der sidder folk, der har rejst meget, og som har spist på de fineste steder.
Hej så.
Hej.
Kan vi lige kigge køkkenet? Hvis du går ud her, så kigger vi lige her. Er det okay?
Man skulle have mad i fængsel, men det var ikke meningen, at køkkenet skulle være i fængsel. Hold da kæft, mand. Jeg får næsten lyst til at hente en spand maling, og så bare starte med at male lortet. Er der mere, jeg skal sige til dem?
At de ikke må gøre det nu.
At de ikke må gøre mig noget?
Ja.
Men der er jo 2 måder at slå dem ihjel på.
Kan I ikke bruge den ord, det der slår ihjel?
Hvad? Man kan faktisk godt bide dem over. Men det ser ikke kønt ud i kanten, Lars, vel?
Det er naturens gang. Det er vi øverst i fødekæden. Det er skræmmende at sige, men det er vel meget sjovt.
Den er så god, den her.
Project that we made within my foundation, and I just want to tell all you who are chefs that you could easily do something similar here. What we basically were doing, that we spent a little bit of money launching a cooperation project with the prison service in Denmark in order to explore if well-designed cooking training could help cut recidivist behavior, that is, could help inspire inmates to change their career. And to launch a public debate about re-socialization. It all started out as a TV documentary where I went into a closed state prison with a team of chefs to see if we could unfold new potentials within the inmates. And we basically ended up in prime time in front of the whole nation, sharing the insight that in 8 weeks you can actually change, you can teach 20 bandits not only to cooperate, but also to cook one meal at a 1-star Michelin level. And let me also tell you that do not underestimate the impact on their self-esteem and future aspirations when such a bunch of criminals are suddenly, for a couple of hours a day, for a certain number of weeks, are being treated like worthy human beings with hidden resources, and when in the end they're met with standing applause by 60 people when they have cooked the meal of their life. And the very nice thing about all this is that every single criminal who has been allowed to leave the prison, it's 5 in total, we've been able to employ them as culinary colleagues within our companies, and that's important. Before I give you that one, let me just say that we have actually now prolonged the project, so we are now working in 3 different prisons, 1 closed and 2 open ones, and we are teaching 300 inmates the basics of culinary cooking for the next 2 years. And we're going to see if this is an efficient way to help them to become good citizens.
Yo me llamo Afife Yanira Burgos, esta es mi casa. En mi casa vivimos entre 5 personas, mi mamá, mi hermano, yo y mi hermanito y uno de sus sobrinos de mi mamá. Mi papá murió cuando yo tenía 2 años. Bueno, he decidido entrar al proyecto porque, o sea, lo único para mí es ser alguien en la vida, que tenga su profesión. Y, o sea, yo he crecido en ese ambiente que mi mamá no ha podido estudiar, tal vez por darnos algo mejor a mí y a mis hermanos. Y la verdad yo no quisiera estar en esa situación, en ese momento. Como toda mujer, sueño con ser alguien. O sea, yo digo que la mujer es la que más necesita la profesión.
Bueno, para mí es un sueño tenerlo aquí, porque, uno se siente emocionado y feliz, porque muchos de nosotros, o sea, sé que no tenemos recursos.
Images reveal lack of education and lack of hope for a better future. Is not only a problem in the prisons in Europe, it's also a big problem in many countries and places in Africa, in Asia, and in South America. So the big question is, can you combat poverty with deliciousness? I don't know, but we decided to give it a shot. Bolivia is the poorest country in South America. 60% of the population are suffering from hunger and are living below the UN poverty standards. 35% of all people are unemployed. At the same time, Bolivia is the country in the world with the largest biological diversity. More than 4 different climate zones and more than 36 different Indian tribes. It is a country that, without pride and self-esteem, they have lost all wars and almost every football match in 150 years. And now they are suffering from the imperialization of American food systems. This is a poster saying that real Bolivian food is American hamburgers. What a wonderful message to share in this beautiful country. So the thing that we're doing down there is that we are setting up in the capital of Bolivia, the poorest capital of Latin America, in La Paz, as a non-profit project, a fine dining restaurant, a bistro and a bakery, where we employ 30 of the poorest young persons from the slums of La Paz as students. And we teach them to bake and to cook and to become culinary entrepreneurs. And we release them after 2 years. With the other hand, because we have formed a local fraction of Melting Pot, the foundation, we formed Melting Pot Bolivia. We do two things. We do this restaurant project with the 30 students, and with the other hand, we create an independent school and we sponsor the Bolivian food movement. It is obvious that this little adventure could turn out to be the single biggest failure and the most crazy thing I have ever embarked on. But then again, what do we have to lose apart from a little bit of money and some time? My board of directors asked me a couple of months ago, don't you lose your money and time in Bolivia? I say, how the hell do you want me to answer that question? The only thing I know is that what I have learned from creating Noma with René and from making the Nordic cuisine movement is too important to be reserved for ourselves. And if we succeed, if we are lucky, if we succeed in sharing this knowledge with the Bolivian people, that will mean so much more to the destiny of that nation than Noma and the Nordic cuisine has ever meant and will ever mean to anyone. And if Guy, who is dead now, had participated in that board of directors meeting, he would have told those business guys that the only way to do great work is to follow your heart. And if you do great work, money will never be a problem. And that's basically the key of what I wanted to share with you today, the idea that if you do great work, money will never be a problem. Meaning first, profit second. If you want to be, if the most important thing for you is to become the richest man in this country in 4 years, I don't think I can learn you anything. But if you, as a means or instrument of unlocking the power of the market or unfolding the potential of the culture around you, or unfolding the energy of your colleagues and employees, I think that this strategy that I have been following for the last 25 years has proved extremely efficient. Let me end sharing with you the legend of the hummingbird. Legend has it that one day there was a tremendous forest fire. The terrified and shocked animals all watched the disaster, unable to help in any way. Only the little hummingbird bustled about back and forth, fetching a few drops of water at a time in its small beak to throw them on the fire. After a while, the armadillo, who was irritated by this pathetic display, said, "Hummingbird, are you crazy? Do you think that you are going to put out the forest fire with these little drops of water?" The hummingbird answered, "I know I can't, but I'm doing my part." Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the audience to come up with questions too, but I can't resist. I have this brilliant idea, I think. If you really want to change the world, or the way the world feeds itself, let's be honest. Today, chains of McDonald's and what was the other?
Burger King. Kentucky Fried Chicken.
That's burger? Yeah, that's burger. Can do more about more good about the health of young kids than the Ministry of Health. Let's be honest, because the technology guys who makes the food for McDonald's and Hesburger has more influence on the health of young kids. So isn't it a better way to go to them and say, come on, I have a cheaper way to make bread. It will look good for you. Let's do it together.
I believe that I would prefer. Well, one thing. Well, firstly, I think you have a point, and the point is that instead of considering the biggest food companies of your country as evil empires, there is another idea that is to try to seduce them to contribute to a better world. I do not have confidence in the big junk and fast food corporations, I must say. So what I would think would be a superior idea to the one you presented would be to create a non-profit fast food restaurant chain in a strategic alliance with the national television, and then redefine the food that will be served in that non-profit, family-oriented fast food restaurant that you will situate just as a neighbor to Burger King or McDonald's, and then you would ask the most intelligent McDonald's guy to come on your team and realize your vision of a fast food restaurant in Latvia anno 2012.
All right, thank you. Okay. Anybody to do that here today?
The idea, the good thing about doing non-profit stuff is that suddenly everybody loves you. So if you try to compete with McDonald's face to face, you might get killed. But if you team up with national television in order to change eating habits of kids and make a television program that will end up where the head chef of that restaurant chain you're creating, non-profit, is teaching kids in the television to cook along those lines, then you are almost sure that that restaurant will be a world-class success.
Where do you get all those people who are ready to work for years for nothing, just for fun, for the idea?
No, you're wrong. The employees will get, of course, they will get money. And but the thing is that when you allow somebody to do some of the greatest projects in the world, if that person is, I mean, take when we're setting my partner. I told him in the beginning we're going to create one of the greatest restaurant projects ever seen, but you will have a lousy amount of money. You will have maybe 2,500 lats for the first couple of years, and in Denmark that's not very much for a head chef.
It's like per year.
3,000 euros a month. For a head chef in Denmark before taxes, and taxes is 70%.
Please don't tell it here, so they all will leave Denmark.
But 70% taxation. 70% taxation. But then the point is that today, the funny thing is about speaking about that, there are 60 chefs employed at Noma, but 30 chefs are working for free, just to learn.
All right.
So working at Noma, participating in that project has never been about earning money, but it has been about learning and pushing things. But speaking about non-profit projects, it's never a matter of taking away the money from the employee. It's just a matter of giving up profits. And then of course you can't be a non-profit project. You cannot be industry leader in terms of salary, but you can give a decent salary.
Okay, questions please. We have plenty of chefs here, willing to suck the knowledge out of you, I guess.
As long as it is not the semen.
All right, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The second floor. That's wonderful. Thank you. Actually, very, very much. One last question. Do you still work as a chef or just doing that evangelizing around the world?
Well, basically I cook for my family, I cook for my friends, but I don't work, every night in restaurants like that. And at a pretty young age, I realized that there were so many chefs who would end up being greater chefs than me, so that I should really do my best in this world. It should not be spend all my time on cooking, but teaming up great people for great projects.